we will have the joy and pleasure to have with us Mr. Oliver Lehmann. So he's the one who is going to conclude our two-day forum with his presentation, Project as Profit Centers, when projects are done for paying customers. So I believe Oliver is with us here and he can hear me. So they say when you want to introduce Oliver, you don't know exactly where to start. He's a trainer, training manager, speaker, analyst, president of Project Business Foundation, ATP instructor at Project Management Institute. He's in this business since 1995. So before that, he worked more than a decade as a project manager with a focus on automotive and other manufacturing industries. I believe there's plenty of things that we can learn from him and his extensive experience. The theme of his lecture, Projects as Profit Centers, when projects are done for paying customers, is dealing with the issue that the world of project management is in a fundamental change, a collaborative revolution. Projects that would have been done internally in the past are more and more given to external contractors, who in turn may use subcontractors and subcontractors, building complex project supply networks. This cross corporate way of doing projects is the market for professionals in project business. Based on specific expertise and assets, they have the intention to serve their project customers, make them happy, but also need to be profitable and consider the cash flow. Project business is a high risk business for all parties involved. So Mr. Lehman gives us some insights into the specific challenges of doing project business and provides an example for methods managing it benefit engineering. So boss, so you want me to bring money home with projects? Let's talk about solution. So I'm happy to hear what kind of a solutions Mr. Lehman has to offer us. So I believe you can hear me and that you are ready to give us your presentation. So please take the floor.
I'm 100% ready. Thank you for the introduction, and it's all true what you said. It's a lot. Yeah, I think I need to be able to share my screen. That's the last thing that is missing. May I ask the admins to enable that?
I believe very soon they will resolve this issue. So you're co-host now, so you can share your screen.
On both.
It just said that screen sharing is disabled. Do I have to accept something somewhere?
Let's try now.
Much better. Yep, there it is. Thank you very much. There it is. Yeah, that's what I'd like to talk with you, to you about the last, I think it was bit less than an hour now that I have for that. I'd like to talk with you about a topic that has thrilled me, kept me busy for the last couple of years. Projects as profit centers, as one part of project business management. Project business management has two sides. One side is the customer side, the other one is the contractor side. So our focus tonight will be on the contractor side. Both sides are interesting. Both sides, there's a lot to learn and a lot of things that we can do better. But if the time is short, you will have to focus on one side. And I think the profit center side is the side which is more interesting to the attendees here. At least that's what we discussed in the talks when we made a decision for this evening. Here's some things about me. I don't want to spend too much time talking about me because the topic is not Oliver Lehmann. The topic is project business, and in particular project business from the point of view of a contractor. Maybe one thing, I was with PMI for a long time. I've been with PMI since 1998, volunteer since 2001. I was president of the PMI Southern Germany Chapter, which unfortunately does no more exist because the German chapters, there were 4 chapters, they merged to become one chapter. So there's a new chapter now for all of Germany. I was part of the kickoff of this project, but others finished it now. So these are the things that I would like to talk with you about, from internal projects to customer projects. What kind of steps are these? Then projects as businesses. What are really the challenges that people are facing? Then I'd like to talk with you about solutions. Of course, we cannot talk about all solutions. We could spend days talk about the things that can be done better, that can help organizations that do projects as businesses to not only have better projects, but also have a better business at the same time. But I'd like to give you a quick introduction to one of the tools that we have. And you heard already, it's called benefit engineering. And then I'm open for questions, and I hope you will have a lot of questions, because this normally shows that my participants, my attendees, are interested in the topic. So number one here is from internal projects to customer projects. I'd like to introduce you to a lady called Clara Loft. Clara Loft, she's a project manager. She tells us she knows the value of her work. Actually, many project managers don't know the value of their work, and many organizations make it hard to know the project, the value of your work as a project manager. She does a lot of things very, very well. She has internal projects for her employer that she manages. She implements strategic initiatives, brings change. She develops new products, services, many other things. She builds teams across the organization, cross-functional teams, and she delivers on time. So this sounds like a very good project manager, I think. Her big specialty is cross-functional project management. That's the core topic of internal project management in the majority of organizations where you have some kind of a matrix organization. Here's an example. First of all, what we see is just a functional organization. We see a division manager on top. We see there are several departments in this division, and each department has here between 3 to 6 employees. There's an interesting thing about that. Department managers very often, not always, but very often, measure their value, their significance, their importance in the organization by the number of employees. There are several reasons for that. One reason is when they are trying to find a new job, the first thing that the recruiter will ask them, what was your span of control? How many people did you have under your control? And the next question typically is, what was the budget that you controlled? And budget comes typically with employees. The more employees you have, the more budget you have at the same time. Another thing, by the way, is more soft aspects. In many organizations, you have a grapevine radio. You have rumors going around. If you have more employees, it's more likely that you will hear early, hey, there's a rumor going around. And the other thing is, how do you spread rumors? Yeah, you tell your employee, hey, don't tell anyone, but this is a story that you should know, but don't tell anyone. And then the employee will tell this another one, and so on and so on. My department manager 4, in my example here, has 6 employees. So it's much easier to do this here than for department manager 3, who has only 3 employees. This comes with an interesting corollary for internal projects. If your project, maybe temporarily, needs someone from this functional organization, needs one of these employees as a project team member, this will mean for the department manager temporarily a loss of influence, a loss of power, a loss of importance in the organization. And that's something department managers typically don't like. And I found this is independent of the age of the department manager. Young department managers, older department managers, they are the same. Men and women are the same. Different countries, wherever you go, it's the same everywhere. One thing that makes a difference is corporate culture. Corporate culture makes a difference. And the story I just told is not true for every organization, but I think for a majority of organizations. So exactly this happens here now. We have a cross-functional project here. The project with the project manager, some team leads, team members. In my example, keep it small, 5 team members. The project gets the team members, including the project manager and the team leads, gets them all from inside the functional organization. What does it mean as a problem for people in here? For all the people that we see here, they have a core problem, and that's they are servants of 2 masters. Let me, for example, talk with you about team member 4 here. Team member 4 is in one direction an employee under department manager 1, but is also a member of the project and should listen to what the project manager asks or tells to do. And what is when the department manager and the project manager have direction that is in contradiction? The project manager needs team member 4 for 1 week in some nice place, Hawaii. Yeah. I need you, team member 4, I need you for a week in Hawaii. Sounds great, yeah? Department manager 4 says, no, will not go. So what will team member 4 do? Will team member 4 book a flight, hotel, maybe rental car, all these things? Or will the team member just stop that all and stay here? What we just described has a name, and it's called the matrix organization. And in many organizations, team member 4 will stay at home, will not go to Hawaii because the line manager, the department manager is stronger than the project manager. That's what we call a weak matrix, weak from the point of view of the project manager. Project manager is often more a coordinator. It's often called a coordinator. Yeah? The project management team and the project manager are typically part-time in such a matrix organization, such a weak matrix organization. They're not there all the time for the project. I saw weak matrix projects at values of hundreds of thousands of euros, and the project manager was still expected to run the project part-time. And there was not much project management team. Functional managers have the budget. Project managers often don't have a budget in a weak matrix. They're expected to make some plans for people and for tasks and for results and deliverables and artifacts and whatever you want to call it, but they don't have an own budget. The functional manager has a budget for the project, if there is a budget there at all. Often they don't have a budget at all. Then who does staffing, procurement, all those things that may be important for the project? It's someone in the functional organization. It's someone in an HR department, in a procurement department, and so on. Resource availability, low, unreliable. My example with team member 4, who should fly to Hawaii, will stay here, will not fly there. Low resource availability. And even if resources are promised and project managers are told, yes, of course, you will have the people that you need, and agreements are made, it can well be when the work has to start for a person, for a machine, maybe for a room, when you need this all, it's no more available for you. You cannot really rely on these agreements as a project manager. And this all goes down to the reputation of the project manager. Typical for a weak matrix is that project managers have a poor reputation inside the organization. They are late, they don't deliver what is expected. If they have a budget, they often exceed the budget and miss deadlines and whatever it is. Yeah, this all is easily explainable in such a situation, but this is the weak matrix. Could there be a strong matrix? If we have a weak matrix, there may also, oh, this was too fast. There may also be a strong matrix. Yes, of course. Strong matrix, role of the PMI, really, of the PM, really is a project manager here. Sometimes called program manager, not because it's a program, but to give the project and the project manager more value. Availability, full-time. Project manager, project management team are full-time. By the way, where can we find this? We find it often in customer projects. In customer projects, the role of the project manager, the availability for the project is often full-time, because in a customer project, the organization brings money home. By the way, some people say customer-facing project. I prefer just customer project. I think that's clearer what this is. It's not just facing a customer. It's a profit center. We do it for a customer. And that's why project managers, project management team are in comparatively small projects already full-time, because that's the way of the organization to make money, to bring money home, to have income, to have revenues. The budget is typically with the project manager, easily explained. The project manager, the budget for the project manager is calculated. The customer will pay us, example, 10 million as a fixed price project, will pay us a fixed price of 10 million. We would like to keep 2 million for ourselves, so 8 million is the budget. Whatever kind of contract you have, somehow it works like that. The money that we get paid by the customer minus the money that we want to keep for ourselves, this is the budget for the project. Project managers are often doing staffing, procurement, all those things by themselves. Our example project manager has 8 million euros now, can use the 8 million euros to get some people on board, to buy something that cannot be made inside the own organization. Resource availability is high. Of course, if this is a customer project, we make money with the project and we need someone in Hawaii, someone will fly to Hawaii. Otherwise, we cannot build a customer for that. And by the way, otherwise, we may run into a breach of contract situation. Companies don't like to be in a breach of contract situation. Most of them, unfortunately, it's not true for all, but I think it's true for the vast majority. You don't want to be in a breach of contract situation. So of course, the person will fly to Hawaii so that we meet our contractual obligations. And all these this different situation that the project manager is in leads to a much higher reputation. They have better chance to be on time, to deliver what is required from them and what has been ordered. Strong matrix is very typical for customer projects, not always, and weak matrix not always for internal projects, but for the majority, it's true. By the way, we have then this balanced matrix, already sneaked in briefly. I sent it away again. The balanced matrix is when project managers and line managers sit together and decide whether team member 4 will fly to Hawaii or not. The balanced matrix is where this is not left to the team member, to the employee. Whom will I frustrate here? It's not the job of people. They're not paid to frustrate people. That's a decision to be made by management. Of course, the person may be available, maybe in this meeting as well, and may say, hey, I love Hawaii, or I hate Hawaii, or whatever it is, of course, but it should be a decision made by someone else to take the burden from the employee, from the team member, to have to frustrate people. So weak matrix, very common for internal projects. In customer projects, we very often have strong matrix. By the way, exceptions in internal projects, you have a regulatory project. There is a law that requires the project. The project does not follow a business case. It follows a legal requirement, maybe with a hard deadline in, maybe with the possible punishment that someone has to go to jail if the project is not finished on time. I saw such projects in the past, and the project managers were extremely powerful. Maybe it is sponsored by a top manager in the organization, CFO, CEO. These are very, very powerful, even if they are internal projects. Customer projects in a weak matrix, how can that happen? If you have an organization where you have a portfolio with hundreds, maybe thousands of projects, then the situation is changing again. The project is no more so much seen that it brings money home, because there are many other projects that bring money home as well. The customer was promised during proposal or bidding phase was promised to be the king as a customer. Now the customer finds himself or herself in a waiting line in a supermarket. No more king. So our Clara so far was strong in working in a weak matrix. These are the things that made it easy for her, that allowed her to be successful in a weak matrix environment. Swimming in the organization like a fish in the water, stakeholder orientation, servant leadership, persuasiveness, not power, soft skills, social skills, self-control. These are the things that she used to be successful in this weak matrix environment. I met a lot of project managers who are very, very good in that. Things changed because her company made a decision to fire her from one day to the next. All the things that she is good in, all the skills that she has, are no more needed in the organization because the project is now outsourced to an external provider. And all the things she has, all the skills, all the competency, all the professionalism, no one is anymore interested in that. She felt outright redundant, and she was made redundant, of course. She thought about the situation. More project managers are hired for customer projects, meanwhile, than for internal projects. If you don't believe me, I will show you some numbers on that. She could just change the side. Bringing money home with project, can it be that difficult? Let me show you some numbers on that. That's a survey I made 2016, end of 2016, 590 responses, all from all around the world. I asked people, what is the trend that you see in your organization? The trend in the past, these are the green bars, the green columns here, and your expectation for the near future. And people said there's a majority and overweight on the right-hand side. Buying more often is a trend. They had a scale from -3 to +3. 0 is neutral, nothing is changing. On the left-hand side, people say we choose make more often. On the right-hand side, they say choose buy more often. And we say there is much more on the right-hand side. The overweight, by the way, mathematically is 1.3. So that's about here somewhere for the green columns and 1.0 for the red columns. So there's a trend here. It will be interesting to repeat this when COVID is hopefully soon going down. We have vaccines now, so it should go down. Yeah. Whenever buy is chosen in a make or buy decision, a customer project is created for a contractor. Make leads to an internal project. Buy leads to another customer project. I want to run such a project. I want to run a temporary profit center. Clara went on the job market, and actually project managers who are prepared to do that are wanted. I'm not saying that they are all able to do that, but the business spirit in here is already a big argument that you show business spirit, that you're prepared to do that, that you're interested in doing that. A lot of things changed. The first most obvious one, she's now responsible for 2 organizations, for what happens in 2 organizations, not just one. The contractor organization where she works, but the customer for whom she is active, the target stakeholders of her work, the customer also. So she has to work over a border between 2 organizations. Often at this border, there are disputes, and she had to bridge them. Commercial interests are a common cause for conflicts here. National, corporate, cultural conflicts can be there. Whose processes are applied, the contractors or the customer's processes? Whose tools? What software are we going to use? When the customer and the contractor have different software in use, this can lead to a problem. Communication styles. Oh, data protection, GDPR, and big egos another big thing. Two organizations, two sides with management, often with strong managers, with noisy managers sometimes, big egos often, and they can really clash, and it's not rare. Then Clara was confronted with a lot of terminology that we are completely, and she was completely unfamiliar with. By the way, benefit engineering is what we will discuss here. The rest we will not be able to discuss it here. We don't have the time for that. But you see, there is so much to learn. And a lot of that is just terminology. What is privity of contracts? What is a statement of work? She had to deal with contracting. And contracting is different from just project management. You look at different things. In a project environment, you try to avoid worst case scenarios. In a legal understanding, you prepare yourself and you prepare your project for the worst case that is not impossible to happen. In a project, lawsuits, litigation, that's the big worst case scenario. It will consume a lot of management attention. Someone will spend a lot of time to run such a lawsuit, and public will see it. One of the big problems here is this is not something inside the protective walls of the organization. This is somehow in public. So she spoke to her manager again. Boss, you want me to bring money home with projects? Let's talk about a solution. She needs to learn that. So what are the challenges when we have projects as businesses? I just see you see my wrong screen. I think the whole time already. Just noticed that. Sorry for that. Have to show it to you again. I was on the wrong screen. I thought I was on the right screen. I selected the right screen here. I don't get the right screen here. Hang on a second, please.
Try to click on the more. When you click on the share screen, then on the more and see is there your extended monitor.
It doesn't allow me anything, only host all participants who can share.
Everyone can share.
I see it now. Yeah, I see it now here. So that now it's there.
Thank you.
Share again. When did it change? I think I selected the correct one originally. Okay, so now it should look much better. Yeah. So the next chapter of this presentation is projects as businesses. What are really the challenges that we are facing here? When we want to be successful in a customer project, we have three big challenges. One challenge, of course, is the happy customer. The happy customer is our future. The happy customer may allow us to become incumbent, which makes it much easier to win new business. The happy customer may be our reference, may recommend us to others. Then we must have, not only want, we need this. We need a profitable projects. Otherwise, at one point in time, we will no more exist. Another one is protection of liquidity. Liquidity is often ignored, but that's a very important thing. As a contractor, you lay out money for the project, for the customer. When will you get it back? Will you get it back at all? What if you don't get it back? Liquidity is the more important cause of illiquidity, of insolvency in reality than profitability. You can survive some time if you run out of profitability, but if you run out of liquidity, you have to close down your shop. Another survey, actually 3 surveys, the same question. What type of project are you currently managing? The red bars say this is the people who said, I'm doing customer projects. The blue bar is people who do internal projects, and the yellow have some different settings. The world is not just black and white here. There are other settings for projects as well. And what we see is in 3 surveys, 2015, 18, 19, more than 50%, maybe a bit more, maybe much more than 50% said, I'm on customer projects. We are not talking about a minority here. We are not talking about something that is exotic, that is somewhat of a strange maybe in project management. No, that's a core topic of project management, to run a project as a profit center. That's what the red bars, the people in the red bar are doing here. They run it as a profit center. We see more procurement is done by customers. This was the previous survey. Now we see the other side, the side of the project managers involved. And what we see, a healthy market trend for vendors. Again, I have one open question. Will this remain with COVID now? I think COVID is a driving force here, not a restraining force. I think it will accelerate the process, but we will have to measure that when it's time to measure it. I think it's still too early for that. Internal projects and customer projects are different. You already saw some of these differences, and I have a long list here. And by the way, this list is even longer. It's a long, long list. And whenever I look at the list and look at reality, I find some new points that are still missing on my list. I think it's still not complete. So many differences, so many differences. I think the most important one is the top one. An internal project is a cost center for the performing organization. A customer project is a profit center. Then the other thing we see, and it's one of the reasons why we have more project managers here, I think, what we see is the emergence of project supply networks. Project supply networks are similar to supply chains in production, in service, in operations. They have supply chain management, well developed. They have education for that. They have literature. They have software. They have academic research and everything you need. We have a similar situation in our projects. You see here a situation on the left-hand side, the buyer, the customer, just as a seller. When the contract has been signed, this is a contractor now. On the other side, we have one that is a seller also to the buyer. But at the same time, this has subcontractors, sellers working for them. This is a prime contractor. And the prime contractor is both at the same time, customer to the subcontractors and contractor to the final customer. And there may be a third tier, a fourth tier in there. We have a very similar situation in many projects today to what we find in supply chain management. But we miss all the professionalism that they have, the education, the research, the literature. Nothing is there. Academia, do nothing on that. Nothing worldwide. Trainers, my job, same thing. There are not many trainers out there with the topic. Then another survey. One of the big problems that we have in project supply networks are conflicts. Why do we have them? On a scale from 1 to 5, people were asked and they answered number 1. The longest bar here is conflicting business interests. Customers, contractors, maybe subcontractors, each has own business interests, and then they can run into conflicts. Then number 2, very near together, diversity of cultures, legal systems, moral compasses, and incompatible egos, the clashing egos. The third line is about individuals. The second line is about groups, cultures, organizations. So some incompatibility between them. And then some more. By the way, one down here, default, rare in this list, but when it happens, it can be one of the worst things that can happen to you. That's insolvency of a party. Project business is high-risk business for all parties involved. One reason why we have different business interests is the way how a project realizes benefits. This is the typical situation in internal projects. By the way, in project business, the customer has probably an internal project. So that's the expectation of the customer. Here we see a single delivery, project life cycle. When it's over, then benefit realization life cycle will begin. We build a bridge as a project life cycle. When all this work is done, we hand it over to traffic, and now benefits can be realized. Here's a situation where we have an overlap, where we have so-called staged deliveries. We have little deliveries that add more and more functionality, increments of the product until the product is fully handed over, or service, or whatever we have. So benefit realization begins already during the life cycle of the project. But we still see the majority of this benefit realization is in the future. That's the typical view of an organization running an internal project, for instance, our customer. This is what the contractor sees. There will be a first payment by the customer. And that's the moment when benefit realization begins. There will be a last payment by the customer. And this is when benefit realization ends. A completely different perception of benefit realization. By the way, again, these three here are very common, very frequent examples. There are other possibilities how benefit realization may look like. Even in customer projects, we may have different structures, but I think that's the most typical situation that we see here. A number of payments. The first payment begins benefit realization. The last payment ends it. Another challenge is project business does not begin with the project charter as we have it in the PMBOK guide, or with project selection or so. There's a long process before that. First, we see on the customer side some decision making, particularly make or buy decision, developing statement of work, invitation for bid, request for proposal, and so on. Then we have an important decision here on the side of the vendors, of the sellers. We use seller and vendor as synonyms, by the way. They also have to make a decision. Are we going to offer for that? We got this invitation for bid. Are we sending a bid? We got the request for proposal. Are we sending a proposal? And if yes, this has to be developed, of course. And by the way, the relationship with the customer has to be developed at the same time, and vice versa. And then we have contract management. This is now the time when the project happens. Now we have probably on the contractor side a project charter, and now this project is done. At one point in time, the project is closed out, the contract is being closed out. There may be some additional services at the end. There may be warranty and things like that. But apart from that, this project will no more generate benefits for the seller. It will still generate benefits for the customer. This isn't very nice here. This isn't any, sorry. Different behaviors are required at different times. That's another thing. While we are in business development, the focus is on competing. The sellers compete with each other. Sellers and buyer compete. The buyer wants as much delivery as possible for as few money as possible. They want it cheap. They want it economically viable, and what the terms are for that. They want to save money and get as much as possible out of the project. And of course, the seller has the opposite interest, get as much money as possible for as small of a delivery of a service as possible. This has to change during the contract life cycle here. The focus is moving to completing now, because now they have to act as partners in here. How good are organizations to change their behavior that quickly? I think that's a very, very difficult thing. From one moment to the next, the contract has been signed. We have to completely change our behavior. I don't think that humans are very good in that, at least the majority of humans. Again, sorry for this this bar here, this diagram here. Normally it looks a bit nicer. I talked already about supply chain management. This is what you see in manufacturing, what you see in production. That's my home industry, by the way. I come from manufacturing. from automotive mostly. And these are the supply chains that you find there, very orderly, well described with software and professionalism and everything. This is the world that we have. It is very, very complex, lots of different relationships, and a contractor that is a third-tier contractor over this line, maybe a first-tier contractor for another service or product. And sometimes contractors go together, build a new organization, a temporary joint venture, a consortium, and work for the consortium, in the consortium for the customer. And this is the big problem that we have. Education. Education for project business management is lacking. By the way, for both sides, customers and contractors. It is true for both sides. Most of the practitioners in this field are not fully educated. They should know something about project management, but also about business management, which includes commercial questions, but also legal questions. And most of them are uneducated in one of the two fields. Some are not educated in either of the fields. So what happens then? Project managers have to learn the discipline by trial and error. But there's a problem with trial and error. Trial in customer projects is expensive, and error even more. Again, in a very worst case, it can destroy your organization. And this happens. I'm not talking about theory here. I'm talking about real life problems that we have. Solutions, I have something for you. An example for a solution for the contractor perspective, benefit engineering. A typical problem that we have in a customer project is, well, we have problems. Maybe a crisis. Maybe there is a deadline, an important deadline. We can't meet it. Maybe the money that we get paid by the customer is not enough to do the project for the customer. So we have a financial problem. We have a time problem. Maybe we have technical problems, other kinds of problems. We have to understand these problems first. That's where benefit engineering begins. Most companies I know, when they have, particularly when they have a monetary problem, the project gets too expensive. What do they tell the project managers? Save money. Save it somewhere where the customer does not see it, cannot directly respond to that. The problem with this, it's called cost engineering very often. Cost engineering is just another word in most organizations, another word for cost cutting. When you do that, there are some limitations. One limitation is, of course, the happy customer. The customer may notice that. Another limitation could be the contract. Maybe another limitation is the law, that you act against the law in such a moment. So there are limitations on cost engineering. By the way, there are not many limitations on benefit engineering, but you have to understand your own problems. Then have a close look at your customer. You are maybe on the premises of the customer, or at least you know a lot about the customer. You work with the customer, you work for the customer. You open doors that have not been opened for years. You look under rugs where no one had looked under the rug for many years. And you find things here. You see problems they have. You see missed opportunities. You see risks, maybe high risks that they have, and no one really addressed them. You may see managers with a bad feeling about that because they are aware of that, but did not find the time to address that. Needs, wishes, wants. What do they really want, the customer? You work with them, you talk with them. So you know it, you see it. They tell you, they let you feel it. Yeah? And there are risks and problems. Then the next thing is assess your own strengths. There must be something where you know how to deal with these needs, wishes, wants, risks, and problems, and so on, and analyze your own costs versus the benefits that you can create by making a recommendation. And that's your next step. You define a solution that is helpful for you, that is useful for you. You define solutions so that it is also useful for the customer. You propose it to the customer, you sell it to the customer. You know the customer. I hope the customer trusts you. So you can build on this trust and on this knowledge, but you have to be careful, of course. If you do the wrong thing, this may backfire. And then if you're successful, you implement the solution, but you tell the customer, okay, but we will need some extra money to do that. We will need some extra time to do that. We will need access to this and that we don't have so far, but to help you, we need something that we don't get so far. So you help the customer. Is it a difficult task, benefit engineering? First of all, it is a very simple task. One reason is you're there. You know so much about the customer, but there's another reason, and that's the problem of management attention today. You see my two pictures here, and it's a bit the past and today. In the past, this manager, obviously male with female and male people working for him, and this lady on the right, she really looks very afraid. Don't talk wrong word. And management by the time was much, much easier than today. Managers didn't have to think about diversity and political correctness and all those things. By the way, I think it's good that they have to think about that. Don't misunderstand me. Competitors were much, much less. The number was much, much less, and you knew them much, much better. Your customers didn't know that much about your business and about the market and so on. Today, this lady is alone. She has to make her management decisions alone here. She has to use the computer alone. She doesn't have someone to do the writing for her. She has to do it by herself. And the entire environment we are working in has changed. Meanwhile, heterogeneous global customers, they have access to information. They have easy access to different competing vendors, and they can compare prices and services and everything. And it's changing so fast. It's even, the list is even without COVID, which increased this all. Managers today are overtaxed with the need for attention. And that's why many of them have bad feelings about this, because they are aware of that. They have the feeling they are not good enough for the job. So Clara has to learn this all. She has two options: learning by trial and error, which we saw already is expensive. Learning by professional qualification, that's also not cheap, but much, much cheaper than trial and error in customer projects. Her employer made a decision: yes, we will help you. Training, consulting, coaching, literature, something to read. There's not much literature out there. This is my book here. You will have difficulties to find more books. Then she has to learn a mission success first approach. This means when we do a customer project, for us, for other contractors, for the customer, mission success is the highest goal we have, but we have to achieve it together, which means everyone in the project supply network has his or her place. Every organization has a right to have own interests, but the big idea is to meet, to satisfy the common interests. Cornerstones are good faith behavior, completing over competing. We want to have a great project together and of course bring money home with that. A mutual respect of project participants' business interests. We want our interests to be respected by others, and we have to respect theirs. We have to bring them together. So these are the three big goals that we have. I think the most important thing, what you need in this field, is someone to ask, some kind of mentor or coach who is there for you whenever you need him or her, with whom you can discuss all the problems that you have in the own organization, but also with the customer, with subcontractors, maybe subcontractors, and so on. Someone who understands your concept and your goal to bring mission success first, and who not only understands that, but helps you do it, supports that. Any questions from your side?
Dear Oliver, thank you very much for this great presentation. Even though us from other fields of work could learn a lot also from your lecture, and this is the opportunity, I would say the last opportunity for our participants to pose some of the questions before we close our forum. So there is a reaction from Nejad. He's saying, fantastic. Thank you, Oliver. And I hope that the others are sharing Nejad's impressions, and they find everything you said really not only interesting but valuable and useful for their future work.
Thank you.
So Aida is also thanking you, and I hope that maybe some of our attendees could also maybe pose some questions. Zorana says, yes, for me, definitely the best presentation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So it's not easy to be the last one in the afternoon on Friday. I mean, you can agree with that with me. So to have this, I would consider this as a really great compliment. And Nermina is also saying like excellent and thank you. So I believe that there are no questions. There are only congratulations and words of thankfulness to everything you have opportunity to share with us, and others opportunity to listen. And Zlatko is also said is awesome presentation. So I believe that that's the mutual feeling and impression. So thank you for this point of view that show need for education continuously. Yes, I think we all should always learn and develop ourselves and educate ourselves continuously. Voislav, thank you. He says it was great. So Nejad have a question. Thank you, Nejad. Thank you, Nejad. How to fit agile way of working in presented ecosystem?
I just have a discussion on that in LinkedIn. There's a problem with agile methods. They are not made for project business. They are made for internal projects. So we somehow have to tweak things, and that's something the promoters of agile methods really hate. They don't like that. So you will have to make some adaptations. My question was a very simple one, by the way. In Scrum, you have a product owner. If you are in project business with a customer and a contractor, where should the product owner sit? Yeah, and some people reacted very negatively about that. They say, "Hey, that's not what our agile methods are made for." And I think they are right. Yeah, some say it's more on customer side, others would see it on the contractor side. So you have difficulties with that. But in reality, it is done very, very often. If you go as a contractor to BMW, just around the corner from me, you have to use agile methods, at least in the IT department. That's what they want now from you. So you have to use a method which is not made for this purpose. I'm not sure that this is a very good decision, but there is no method out there to do project business with agile methods. Maybe some of you are intelligent enough and strong enough to develop that. It's an open field that we have here, completely open.
Cool, thank you. Another question: how do you see it fit process improvement projects in project business?
How do you see what?
How do you see it fit process improvement projects in project business?
Profit improvement.
Improvement. It says process improvement projects.
Process improvement. First of all, mutually. You have to do it together with your client. One of the things that we learned in the Project Business Foundation when we started is you cannot just look on one side or on the other side. It's about an interface. And if you want to understand an interface, you must look at the interface from both sides. So process improvement here means we have to do it together. We have to look at the processes cross-corporate over this border and ask ourselves where are opportunities to improve them, where do we have problems that we need to fix. So I think that's a very specific thing, and we have to look at both organizations. The difficulty is it's temporary. It's not like in production where you make some decisions and then utilize them for the next 5 years or so. It's a temporary thing, maybe for half a year, for a year, maybe a bit more. So it's an investment into a better project, but we have to be aware it's for a temporary time that we are together.
And Andrea says, thank you, Oliver. We are facing these problems every day, and you described solutions for them.
Thank you very much.
You're the man.
Yeah.
Great presentation, says Amra, and one of that I could the best identify myself with, as I myself I'm working in automotive industry. Thumbs up. So great.
That's where I have my home. Yeah, that's where I come from originally.
Yeah, I've mentioned that before your presentation. Yes. So really, I would say that's great impressions and reactions. And what is most important is useful, and they can identify themselves and their problems they're having in a daily business. So you provide solutions, and whoever provides solutions is always appraised. So thank you very much for being with us today. It was really our honor, a pleasure to have you. And as we can say through the reactions, people are thankful and still continuously writing in chat of how great presentation it was, and they thanking you still. So,
if you need my help, you know where to find me, I think. Yeah.
Definitely. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was it. So thank you really for being with us this year as well.